How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of Underrated or Overrated. Honestly, one of my new favorite things that we've been able to do as of recently. Today's episode is going to be all recommendations made by people on our Instagram. So if you have any recommendations, please leave a comment below what we should talk about next episode, or to follow us on Instagram and leave us a suggestion there. Let's get right into it. What is the first underrated or overrated subject for the day?
All right, so the first one that we got for you is going to be from @ohmydeargoodness. Thank you for giving us a topic. And overrated or underrated? Stretching.
Ooh. This is a good one. I think it's definitely underrated, but not because of like stretching itself, if that makes sense.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, we'll dive into it.
That makes literally no sense.
So it's not necessarily the fact that I think stretching itself is this really extremely important thing that's detrimental to people's health and wellness. I think it's important, but I think it's just one part of a bigger picture. Stretching in and of itself to me is not very important, but the things that come around stretching is important. So what I mean by that is whenever I'm working with a client who has coming back from a major injury, specifically knee surgeries, I want to take them through the whole corrective exercise continuum, and that's just one part of it. So I want to also be making sure we're inhibiting muscles that are need to be that neurological lock needs to be released. So be sure we're inhibiting with massaging, foam rolling, and doing those sort of things. And then also lengthening the muscle through stretching, following by corrective exercises on top of that. So I think it's underrated because I think it will stir people to want to dive deeper into doing all the other stuff as well. They will probably, if they're stretching, they're probably gonna be foam rolling as well. And they're also probably gonna be doing corrective exercise as well. At least that's how my brain kind of thinks of it. I think it's important that we do stretch. I think people don't stretch often enough. It's one of those things where it's I don't think it's the thing that will completely fix everything, but I think more often than not, people are not stretching as much as they should be. But even if they were, it shouldn't be the only thing that they're doing.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's more you think corrective exercise or just recovery work is underrated.
Yeah.
As a whole, but not necessarily stretching.
Correct. I think it's an important part of the entire corrective continuum, but it's not the only thing. Stretching in and of itself to me is it's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks people's recovery. I think you need to be stretching, but also think you need to be doing foam rolling and those kind of things. I also think you need to be doing corrective exercises, because once those muscles are lengthened when we're stretching, as long as if we're not actually fixing the root cause of why is those muscles getting tight in the first place, and it might just be overuse, but there's probably some sort of muscular imbalance somewhere up and down the chain that's not actually that's causing that muscle to get tight over and over and over again. Just common ones are people who are sitting at their office all day, for example. If you're sitting at your office all day, most likely hip flexors will be tight, hamstrings will be tight, right? Stretching those things out would be great to help alleviate some of that pain immediately. Mm-hmm. But then if you're not also doing some activation work where you're growing your glute activation and those sort of things where it kind of helps alleviate long-term pain, then to me it kind of defeats the purpose. But I do still think stretching is underrated because it's still one of those things, even if it's not the thing that will fix people, it's still something that people aren't doing enough of. Mm-hmm. But it does need to play it's the one part of a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that I've spoken with, especially clients that feel like they're dealing with chronic pain and just just kind of those little nagging aches and pains, they always say I probably need to stretch. And I always kind of am curious why they think they need to stretch, what the reason is for that. Is it because it feels good, because in that sense it's like, yeah, sure, if it like makes it feel better, then that's great. You should do that as much as you can to make it feel better. But I think it's also like been so ingrained in people from like PE of like, make sure you stretch, you don't want to pull a muscle and like those kind of things. But I don't think it actually does as much as people think it does in like injury prevention and in like actually rehabbing an injury. I think it helps to be more flexible. It helps to be more loosened up, especially like you said, if you're like sitting a lot. But I kind of feel like people put more weight behind it than there probably should be or needs to be.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. I think it's one of those things that, because of like just I don't know, it's like one of those things that just kind of gets stereotyped of like, this is like, when people think of like, how do I like fix tight or sore muscles, or like when I'm feeling achy, it is like stretching. It's like, I'm going to stretch it, you know? But yeah, like to me, it's just like, I think it's something that people, again, like don't do enough, but it's still just like one part of like a much bigger picture. I think stretching is like the analogy of like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound most of the times. It's not like actually into the root cause of it. So I do agree. It's like, I do think people put too much weight behind it of being like, this is the thing that will fix me. But still, I think it is underrated, just because even those clients who say like, I feel like I need to stretch more, they never stretch. You know, and it's like, I'm preaching to the choir. Like, there's like, I should probably be stretching more with like everything that I'm doing. Like, I should probably be stretching my hamstrings and my hip flexors more and all those different things. But so I don't think it's like the thing that's gonna like save your health and wellness. As someone who like has like a bad knee and who like doesn't stretch as often as I should, I still can perform at a high level. But I do think it's an important factor in moderation.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. All right. So for you, your first question, or your first topic today, it comes from _XO_SAR_XO_. She's asking, underrated or overrated creatine?
Ooh. I have opinions on this.
I'm sure you do. That's why I figured you'd be the right one to answer this one.
Well, so just for context purposes, if you had asked me this maybe 2 months ago, I would probably have a very different answer than I do right now. But this is a good time because I have a personal case study that I can apply to this question. So, as you know, I take creatine.
Yeah.
So I take creatine monohydrate. I've taken it for years at this point. Powerlifting, I'm going to get every ounce of help where I can, whenever I can, within what's legal and, you know, acceptable in the drug-tested sport. So I take creatine, and honestly, it's one of those supplements that I feel like I know the data, I know the scientific research, I know it's like one of the most studied, like just has the most info behind it out of pretty much all of the supplements, which is why I take it, because I don't take a lot of supplements.
Yeah. We
don't take a lot of supplements. I don't really find a lot of them to really be necessary or useful for a lot of people, and they're expensive. But creatine is one of those things that, again, has so much data behind it and is for power, for muscle endurance, for strength, which is literally my sport. So
yeah,
I'm going to take it. So all that to say, taking it for a long time, and kind of like, I think for anybody that's performing at a really high level where you're like pushing boundaries consistently, you're kind of always going to feel like shit. Like, that's just kind of the name of the game. Like, your body is just going to feel broken, and you're going to wake up tired, and your central nervous system is going to be fried. And that's just kind of how it goes. So if you were to just ask me like, oh, like, do you think creatine is helping? I would probably be like, I don't know. I still feel pretty tired and pretty beat up.
Right.
But last month, we went to Japan for 2 weeks.
Phenomenal, by the way.
Great.
Highly recommend.
Just lived up to the hype.
10 out of 10.
We got it hyped up a lot for us,
Yeah.
and it lived up to the hype. Went to Japan for 2 weeks. I trained very randomly while we were there, because also Japan has interesting gym culture. They also don't like tattoos, so therefore I was not welcome in a lot of places. Anyways, we went to Japan for 2 weeks. I stopped taking creatine because we were there and I was like, I'm not going to be working out consistently. And so I stopped taking it. And then we came back from Japan and I'm in meet prep right now. So this was last month we came back, jumped right into the training cycle. 2 parts to this. One part, I jumped in the middle of the volume part of the cycle. So like 80% triples, 85% doubles,
Brutal.
maxing
I mean, like,
out. Like,
coming home at like, you were there for like 3.5 hours, almost like every single day coming back from Japan.
yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
But also didn't have any creatine in my system. So I will say I thought about it going into those sessions because, again, like when you've been training so hard for so long, you kind of just get used to what it feels like. It's like, this feels hard, but like I'm used to this. That felt like hard in a different way. It felt hard in the sense of like, oh, I don't have any extra juice in the tank, especially in the endurance side of things, like the muscular endurance and fatigue side of things. I noticed towards like the back half of my training sessions, I was completely gassed. I was just like, dude, I just don't have it. Like, I don't have that extra rep. I don't have that extra set. I can't like kind of just like pull it out like I normally would be able to. And so that's like, there's a lot of variables there that it could be. It could be because I took some time off of training. Could be because nutrition probably wasn't the best in Japan. Also could be because I stopped taking creatine. So once I got back into my regular cycle with training, with nutrition, with sleep, with creatine, all of that was kind of back. I felt normal again. So that's like a very ambiguous personal case study of saying like, here's how it feels when I take it and when like everything is normal, and here's how I feel when I'm not taking it and everything's not normal. So could be the creatine, could be any of those other factors.
Right.
But I will say, for anyone, this is such a long answer, but for anyone that is maybe looking to really see that extra boost where it's necessary, like you're like between like 95 to 100%, and you're like, I'm gonna take every percent that I can get, I think it's worth it personally. As someone that is like trying to kind of get to that level, I think for a lot of people too that are like really serious about training and that want to give themselves every advantage that they can, they don't mind spending money on a supplement. I say there's no harm in doing it. The benefits of creatine, again, one of the most tested supplements, one of the safest supplements, one of the most accessible supplements at this point. I mean, you can get creatine monohydrate from anywhere. Don't waste your time with the other creatines out there. Yeah. Monohydrate is the one that is studied, is researched, is backed. The other ones, I have no idea. Those are not as tried and true. So like anyone that feels like that would be useful for them, you do have to take it every day, which is a big thing that I notice a lot of people don't know. They think it's like any other training supplement where you take it when you train. That's not the case. You have to take it every single day. You don't necessarily need to do the whole like creatine loading thing. As long as you're taking it consistently, it'll saturate your muscles, you'll be fine. But that's kind of my like very long-winded answer on it. Yeah. I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think it is adequately rated in the right circumstance. But I think circumstantially, it really makes a difference. Because if you're just going to the gym twice a week and you're doing like a 45-minute HIIT workout, it's not gonna really, you're not gonna notice really anything at all. But if you're like pushing hard, you're pushing boundaries, you're trying to like, again, squeeze every ounce out of it that you can, I say why not? There's really no drawbacks to doing it.
Yeah. That's great. And I think it is like good that you spend so much time like sharing your own like personal experience and also like diving into like giving it such a good answer, because it is one of those supplements we get asked this like all the time. Like, what are our thoughts on creatine? Because it is one of the more like popular supplements out there. And again, for good reason. I do think it is one of those things that at the end of the day, creatine, if you're taking it and you're training well, you're gonna, it's not gonna be the thing that like, again, like puts you over the edge per se, in the sense of is not going to compensate for a bad training plan. It's not going to compensate for a shitty nutrition. It's not going to compensate. Down goes the phone. It's not going to compensate for like bad sleep habits, right? It's like if you are training hard, if your nutrition is like locked in, you're sleeping well, you're recovering well, you will see benefits from taking creatine. But even then, those benefits are, in the grand scheme of things, small. It's those 1 to 2 percentiles, right? Like even the studies, it's like I mean, we're talking like, it's not like a 25% jump in like power and output, right? It's like 2, 3, like small jumps. Still though, with that being said, like I still do agree with you. Like I think it's one of those things, like in the right circumstances, very underrated, because one, people don't take it properly a lot of the times. But then two, it's just one of those things that like, because of how well studied it is, how safe it is, it's just like I don't see like the drawbacks of not taking it if you're in a power sport specifically.
Question from @Robert Rennie.
Shout out to Robert Rennie.
Shout out to Robert Rennie, trading client.
My guy.
Online trading client. He asks, overrated or underrated, repping to failure?
I love this one. Robert, phenomenal suggestion. Like phenomenal suggestion. I think this one is extremely underrated. Extremely underrated. For like the reasoning for this is, I think it's underrated because I don't think people, like the majority of people who go to the gym don't even comprehend what going to failure is, or what that even looks like.
100%.
It's like, I think a lot of people think of this idea of like, I'm gonna like do reps to failure, and they stop when it starts hurting.
Yeah, it's like reps to uncomfortable.
Yes, exactly.
Not failure.
Very different things.
Just uncomfortable.
Because I think some people will like hear this answer and be like, well, I go reps to failure all the time and I'm not seeing any results. I guarantee you have like 10 more in the tank. Like, I don't think most people truly don't understand like what failure feels like.
Also, because if you're training by yourself, you probably shouldn't be doing this alone.
Right. Unless you're training with someone, you shouldn't be really trying to go to failure depending on like the exercise selection. But let's choose an exercise, for example, you can't do on your own. Push-ups, for example. I think a lot of times people think like, oh my gosh, it hurts, the lactic acid building up, it's burning. I can't even imagine doing another rep, so I'm gonna stop. But you're only putting yourself, like, the only reason you're not doing another rep is not because the musculature is like stopping. It's because you're like mentally stopping yourself. You're putting a ceiling on what you think is possible. Even like I you know, like psychologically, I work with people who like every time I give them like 4 sets of failure for like push-ups, for example. It's like 15 reps, 15 reps, 15 reps, 15 reps. It's like interesting. You do 15 reps all 4 times.
Every single time.
Every single time. Like you end at 15 reps. I wonder what that is. Because typically, and again, like if we're doing it properly, if we're doing like 4 sets of push-ups to failure, 60 seconds of rest in between, it should look like 20 reps, like 15, 7, 2, you know, like the drop off of like those rep schemes should be like evident, and that will be a good sign of like, hey, you really are pushing to failure. Mm-hmm. But it is like this thing in your head, like I've never done more than 15, so that has to be my limit, right? But you don't know, like if you never really push yourself or tried, like you're not gonna even like scrape the iceberg of like what your body's capable of. And I think that's like one of the wonderful and like fun things about exercise and fitness, especially like for me, like in the endurance space, is like you do like a marathon and it's like, all right, like let's try like 26.2. I used to think that was the furthest people ever ran until I heard about an ultras. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are running how far? And it's like, all right, let's try like an ultra, right? And then it's like, you know, like same thing with like powerlifting. I know we've had stories of like when you first went into, I guess you can tell the story, but like when you first would go into the gym and like I think it was your deadlift or your squat?
My squat. For the longest time, I like told Ricky, I was like, I think I just can only, I don't think I'm ever going to break through 200 because I was just stuck there for so many years. I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to squat more than 200. And then the first day I went into my powerlifting gym, I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know what the weight was on the bar because someone else was loading it for me and I wasn't like really able to like stop and look at it and count it. My coach was just like, just go. And I squatted 210 my first day in the gym, which right now, I mean, it's like, yeah, 210 is like not that crazy, but for someone that like for years, I was just like capping myself out at like 200 is the most that I can physically do. Yeah. You know, it's just like, I think that, I think this is maybe like getting more into the area of just like human limits and capabilities, and like we always talk about how amazing the human body is.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Ricky showed me a video the other day of this guy running 1,000 miles on a track. He ran 81 miles every day
for like 12,
what was it,
12 and a half days,
or something?
Close to 13.
Every day. That is like, I can't even comprehend.
He would like show up to the track like in a wheelchair and like wobbling, and then he would just start moving, and then it was extremely painful based on like how his body looked, how his running gait looked, how he like his face looked, like extremely painful, but he just kept taking another step and another step. On paper, telling someone to run 1,000 miles straight, impossible.
And something that you don't just get up one day and do.
No.
That was what I wanted to say to
Yes.
kind of go, I guess, second layer into this question. I think I agree with Ricky. Reps to failure is an extremely valuable and very useful tool, especially as trainers, for us to be able to give that to clients. But that's at a certain level, and that's after a certain amount of time of proving, one, injury, that they're not going to get injured, that they are capable and strong enough to support going to a place like that, as far as, you know, that kind of muscular fatigue. And two, just making sure that like mentally they've built up that kind of muscle as well. Because I think if you just have someone that comes in off the street that's like, yeah, I want to start training, and then you're like, all right, max push-ups to failure, they're probably never going to come back.
Yeah,
they're going to be
totally.
scarred for years.
Right.
And I think that's like, again, part of that like gym bro mentality of like, yeah, let's just go in and just, let's just freaking bang them out today. And then people get hurt.
Shitty form.
Yeah, shitty form. Form breaks down. They just never want to step back into the gym. So I think it is, like, I would agree, it is very underrated as a tool, especially in a trainer's tool belt. But I think it's only for specific people that have proven that they are capable of doing that have put in the work and the time and the energy to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a rite of passage of like, okay, like you're able to like push now. You've like gone to some pretty uncomfortable, painful places, and you're ready to like get in the pain cave now. I think that's kind of like, that's for those people. And I think everyone has the potential of getting there, but there's not everyone that wants to do the work to be able to do that.
I think it's just the biggest thing when it's all said and done is important to push boundaries. It doesn't mean like if you're trying to push down that wall that is your limits every single day, that's how injuries happen. But if you can just brush up against that every single day, and then every once in a while we're pushing against that to push that limit, that boundary just a little bit further and a little bit further, that's how progress is made, is that progressive overload, right? So if we're never even getting close, even if we are just starting off, and we're not even getting close to like that boundary ever, that's when like I think people find stagnancy in their progress, is just, yeah, like we're just not pushing hard enough, right? Because again, it is uncomfortable. It is hard. But I do agree with you. Like it is like, you know, you shouldn't be trying to go to like, again, if form's not there, if like your nervous system isn't even wired yet to like handle that sort of like load, your central nervous system is just gonna like reject it and be like, F you, I'm out of here, right?
Or using it too often.
Yes,
It's
that
like,
as well.
it's like a
Correct.
thing. It's like finishing salt in cooking. You just sprinkle a little bit over the top, you know, just to kind of add that little zhuzh. I like using it as a benchmark in training of like, okay, every quarter we're gonna test your max push-ups, or we're gonna see like
mile time, whatever.
that kind of stuff, you know, or like, oh, you could do a push-up from this height. Okay, we're gonna try it next time at this height.
So pretty much final thoughts as far as this subject goes. Again, Robert, phenomenal topic. This was a very fun one to do. For me, underrated, not only because there's like actual like benefits as far as progress and training goes, but I do think there's a side of it that is beneficial and underrated because it does help us unlock like this true ceiling, like that we don't even like really know until we try, and we try to push against that boundary. And like you said, using it in moderations as like a benchmark test. Like I'm not going to run a marathon every weekend, right? But when I do run a marathon, I want to see if I can beat my last one, right? And so it's like that same mentality when it comes to like our push-ups or any other movement pattern, like how much further can we go and push it? And it does like add this like psychological like that micro victory of that consistency time and time again, and seeing like how far it can grow, like that builds confidence, that builds like self-efficacy. And I think that's like also super underrated. Like when you can do hard things and you are in pain and you can still endure and still keep moving forward, like that's such an underrated human trait.
That's my favorite thing, is when we have clients come in and like have them do like something like a max reps, or like they get on the assault bike and they do
the assault bike will
calories for time or something like that, and they're like absolutely sucking in the moment, but then after they're like almost like euphoric and just so happy and so proud, and they always like thank us, and I'm like, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean,
just took you to hell, but it's fine.
Yeah, you weren't thanking us like 2 minutes ago.
But it's like every time they finish doing something like that, there's just like this like overwhelming sense of just pride.
Yeah.
And you only get there if you're really, like Ricky said, brushing up against those limits and those things that are really, really hard, and then you accomplish them and you're just like, damn, like, what else can I do?
Yeah, totally. So again, Robert, thank you for the question. That was awesome. So the last subject we have for today comes from @Michael Morikawa. Also shout out Michael. Thank you for the suggestion. Underrated or overrated protein products. So he listed bars, powders, chips, whatever else is protein related. So it just pretty much sounds like those products you see in the store that are like protein X, protein whatever, is like these like supplements that like get more protein in.
Great question. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to try and keep it short.
I was going to say, I feel like you have a lot to say about this one.
I have a lot of thoughts.
I'm sure this comes out a lot in like nutrition coaching.
Yes.
For sure.
So I'll start by saying everything that you see that comes in a package or like product that says protein on it, there's marketing behind that. Marketing is very powerful. And I will say that as people become more and more health conscious, and as manufacturers and these big labels become more aware of that, they're going to start putting more things out to market it that way, because they know that's what's going to sell. So I think for anybody that is going into the grocery store and they're just seeing those things that say high protein, whatever on it, you have to be almost like a detective in the grocery store these days when it comes to those specific products. I always tell people, as much as physically possible, try to shop the perimeter of the grocery store, because that's where you're going to find the actual whole ingredients of things. That's where they keep the produce, they're going to keep the meat, the fish, the dairy, all of the things that are going to need to stay fresh. That's usually around the perimeter of the grocery store. And then when you start to get into the middle of the grocery store, that's where it gets a little sketchy sometimes. And not to say that there's only terrible things in the middle of the grocery store, but that's usually where you're going to find a lot of those packaged processed things. So step number one is to be highly skeptical of anything that you see that says high protein, protein packed, blah, 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 whatever marketing verbiage they want to use. Because again, the goal is to sell it to you. So I always tell people, as much as physically possible, start with whole foods. If you can get at least 80% of your protein goals for the day through whole foods, and then you can fill in and you can supplement, which again, supplements are called supplements for a reason. If you can supplement your overall daily nutrition with those products, that's fine. But you want to be starting first with the whole foods, because unfortunately what I see a lot of times is I work with a lot of people that are like, oh, I eat super healthy, I just haven't seen any progress, I don't really know what's going on, blah, 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 blah. I have them like take food photos for a day, and then I'm like, oh, well, you're eating like 10 protein Pop-Tarts and then drinking 2 protein shakes and then having a real meal, like one real meal that's got maybe like 15 to 20 grams of protein in it. And they're like, oh, but I'm eating so much protein. It's like, you're also eating a lot of other shit that's coming in that protein stuff. So that's kind of the caveat there. And the other thing I would say is get really good at reading ingredients labels. Get really good at reading nutrition labels, but also ingredients. Because if you can come to decipher and understand what's on those labels, you're not going to waste your money buying a bunch of stuff that really is kind of just garbage. to be quite frank. There's so many things that, like, my mom is the queen of doing this. She'll be like, oh, Hannah, I found this organic, she's lovely. I found this organic, high protein, whatever bar. It's great. It tastes so good. You should try it. And I like look at the label and it's got like 20 grams of sugar.
Yeah,
the first ingredient is brown rice syrup, and then it has like 8 grams of protein in it.
Tiger's milk.
Tiger's milk.
Dude, shout out to that. Like, I remember the days, and we talked about this before, like, but we both grew up in the era of when Tiger's milk were like the thing.
Tiger's milk and Slim Fast Baby.
Oh, and like both of our parents were like, yeah, it's a protein bar. It's healthy. So I ate like 50 of them, and I became 220 pounds. So.
Well, you also ate a lot of Panda Express, so there's that.
What a time.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive. So yeah, but yeah, there's so much of that just like crap to be out there.
So to give a straight answer to this, overrated. Very, very overrated. I would say most of that stuff, not worth it. Just not worth it. I will say I have found a few products, and I am happy to share these if people want like a list of things that I found specifically at Costco. They're actually like good protein supplements. The list is short, I will say, comparatively to like all the things that you see that are like
so
high protein this or that. The list is pretty short, but that's because, again, it's like there's just not a lot of stuff out there that's actually high quality, sourced well, minimal added ingredients, minimal sugars, things like that. But you know, there are some really good ones out there. But just don't get too swayed by the marketing, by the packaging, by the things that say like, oh, this is going to do this, or this is high protein, blah, 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 blah. And just really get good at reading labels and prioritizing whole foods. At least every meal you have should have ideally 30-ish grams of protein in it, and then you can fill in the gaps from there. Again, this is very much dependent on each person's calorie and protein needs. But like for me, for example, I aim to get about 120 to 130 grams of protein every day. So I have at least 30 grams of protein in every one of my meals. And then I have, again, like a protein shake or something in between. That's just the most foolproof way to make sure you're getting high quality protein in.
There's maybe a shock to people, the food industry, not trying to help you be healthy.
Not really. They don't really care about you.
Might be a shocker.
Yeah,
but
it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
They like money.
Money please. That's all of them.
Yeah.
Like literally all of them. So if you could give one, like what is your favorite like protein specific, like protein product like that? If you could choose one. 'Cause I know there's a lot of like
yeah.
negative things, but obviously we still do have that we do use. So what is like one that you're like, I like this one?
A good protein shake that isn't going to be upsetting your digestive system, isn't going to have a lot of added sugars, and isn't going to be like shitty quality protein, I guess. That's like really the most bang for your buck. It's going to have the highest protein to calorie ratio. It's going to have the lowest extra stuff in it. I mean, I personally like just a whey or a blend protein that's very clean, very minimal ingredients, doesn't mess up my stomach. That's going to be the best bang for your buck. There's so many protein companies, supplement companies out there now, so you can find
a lot of fitness influencers.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but like BPN Supplements is the one that we recommend to all of our clients. They're amazing. We are not sponsored. Wish we were.
Wish we were.
If they wanted to, they could, but
Nick,
they're amazing.
If you're hearing this,
really, really good, high quality, clean supplements.
And third party tested. That's
third party tested, which again, for me, like drug tested powerlifter, I really care about that. So. But protein shake, that's like ultimate home run, slam dunk.
Totally agree. Takes
2 seconds to drink it. Can't get much better than that.
And like you hit on the creatine supplement, so it should supplement the rest of your diet.
Exactly.
So just
whole foods first, supplements after. Supplements are not whole foods. Boom. Let's just leave it at that.
I love it. Sweet. Well, hey, another one in the books. Crushed it. Thank you guys again for all the great recommendations. If you guys have any yourselves, you can leave it in the comments below, or again, follow us on Instagram. DM us any recommendations you would have for underrated or overrated. And as always, be kind, train me, and thanks again, guys.
See ya.